Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today, and welcome to our Employer Diversity Panel. My name is Brittany Furby, and today I am going to be serving as the moderator for our discussion on diversity in the workplace. So I want to thank our four panelists for joining us today, and they are going to be answering a series of pre-selected questions to help guide this discussion, including pre-submitted questions from WVU students. So before we get started today and introduce our panelists, I wanted to take a quick moment to just define what diversity and inclusion means in the context of today's conversation, as that was one of the reoccurring questions asked by students prior to today's event. So most people associate diversity with a person's race and gender. It's the most common, but I think it's important for us all to note that diversity incorporates all elements that make an individual unique from one another. So that encompasses ethnicity, age, sexual orientation, religious views, and actually political beliefs. So when we're talking about inclusion today, we're really talking about recognizing these unique differences that all people have and actively practicing respect for those differences. So with that in mind, we'll get started today, and I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves, starting with Charlotte.
Hello, it's very nice to be with you today. Welcome to all of our viewers and participants. I'm really honored to be on this distinguished panel with these experts and highly professional individuals. I'm the Senior Diversity Outreach Specialist in the Division of Talent and Culture here at the university. And my job is to assure that diverse job seekers in our region, not only in our region really, but my specific area is our region and the local area, but globally as well, that they're aware of opportunities at the university. And there are always a vast amount of employment opportunities here at the university. So without further ado, I'll pass on to the next panelist.
Hi, everyone. My name is Charrae Rogers. I am an area recruitment specialist for Sherwin-Williams. Most people think Sherwin-Williams is the paint company as far as we do the paint, but we do not. We do business-to-business sales, selling paint to different companies and things like that. So I do manage a full-time management and sales program, and then also a management internship. And I also am the HR person for DC, Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, and Delaware. So I have a pretty big territory, but I'm super excited to be here today because, you know, diversity and inclusion has always been, you know, a core focus of, you know, our company, just because our customers are diverse. So I'm so excited to talk about it today. And with that, I'll pass it on to the next panelist.
Thanks very much. Yeah, hi, my name is Ryan Stannard, and I am the regional recruiter for Peace Corps of the United States. So basically our organization, if you haven't heard of us, we take American citizens who are at least 18 and send them overseas to other countries to do service projects in the fields of like education, agriculture, health, just to name a few. So it's generally like a 2-year program, and I'm really honored to be on this panel. Basically, diversity inclusion has always been a very important thing for our organization, for our government agency, as we want all of the volunteers basically to look like the makeup of the United States of America and represent the best of the United States of America. So looking forward to it, and thanks very much.
Awesome. Well, hey, good afternoon, everyone. So I am Buba. I'm the Senior Director for Target Stores out here in Pittsburgh, and also I have stores out in West Virginia. So I'm responsible for about 12 stores with almost $500 million in sales. And I think I will agree with all of my esteemed panelists. I think we are equally as focused on diversity and inclusion, you know, whether it's our team member base or our guest base, right? So it's very important for us. Now, I focus primarily more on the operations side of the business for Targets, and I'm also very involved in the human resources side, but primarily more on the operations side. And hopefully I'll get a chance to kind of talk through some of the things that we're doing, not just on the human resources side of the business around diversity and inclusion, but also on the operations side of the business as well. I'm glad to be here today.
Wonderful. Thank you all again so much for being with us today. And we'll jump right into it with our first question. So what value does diversity of all types bring to your organization? And I'm going to ask that you spend about 2 minutes on this question. And we'll start with you, Charlotte, and go through that same order as we did with the introductions.
Yes, I'd like to, first of all, say that, I work in Division of Talent and Culture. I don't necessarily work with students, but we know that I'm sorry, just a second, I'm having trouble with my screen. That as an institution of higher learning, WVU attracts students from all over the globe. And although the Division of Talent and Culture's responsibility is to build a workforce to serve those students, we really feel that, diversity being the foundation of our very institution. I mean, without our students, what are we? We are nothing without our students. We're a very diverse student body. So we want to make sure that our student body sees a reflection of themselves in the workforce. And so essentially what we're in the business of creating and facilitating future professionals that are equipped at our institution to have far-reaching and global influence. So it's really unfair of us, it would be, if we would not take into consideration our student body and what they expect from us as the workforce that's serving them. So it's important that the faculty and the staff at WVU reflect those diverse perspectives, qualities, and values to our students. Since the Division of Talent and Culture is charged with that responsibility of hiring the workforce, we take that mission very seriously.
Awesome. And kind of echoing a lot of what Charlotte said, definitely for our business, I like to describe, our company, we're in the relationship building business. So we do business to business sales with like hospitals, schools, the government, you name it. So we're always meeting people and our customers too, homeowners, maybe some of your parents, we always have, diverse and as far as our, customers that come in. So, we want people to be able to relate with others, whether that's speaking in your own language that, our customers have and, different things like that. So diversity has always been pretty important for us. And because we have, an increase of customers that have that diverse background, also, having employees and having resources for them to go to where they feel welcome as well. So we have a lot of business resource groups, and they fall into different categories that people are interested in. And then also, I think our company, it has been around for 154 years. So that is a long, long time. So, definitely diversity in thought is super important for us too, because we have to constantly, innovate our business so we can stay, as one of the top retailers in paints and coatings. So all around diversity is awesome for us.
Yeah, I think I'll just echo a lot of what the panelists have said already. I mean, I basically work in the Office of Volunteer Recruitment and Selection, and we actually have a sub-office that's called the Office of Recruitment and Diversity. So, but just because it's in the name, we actually do have a mission. Honestly, it's, given my experience in Peace Corps, I think every volunteer situation is different no matter where they're placed and no matter what their background is. And I think for me, one of the best parts of being a volunteer in Thailand, which was the country of service, the 2 years there, was the fact that I got to see not only myself grow, but also just all the other volunteers in my group grow. And it was interesting to always have conversations with them about what their experience is like, given what their background was. We had people that were African-American, Hmong American, Chinese American, Hispanic American, Latinx, and just seeing kind of what they went through versus what maybe somebody like me would go through just in Thailand. And I think one of the best parts of it is that I think most, at least in Thailand, thought that Americans were just what they see on TV, primarily white people, for lack of a better term. And just, it was really nice for them to gain exposure to the fact that Americans come in all different shapes, colors, sizes, you name it. And just to have exposure to that, and also have exposure to people that come from maybe different countries and have moved to the United States and have integrated or can keep their own culture or a hybrid of the two or something like that. So that's a really big part of what we do. And just saying no matter kind of what your background is, you will find a place in Peace Corps, and you will find that you will have a great experience just sharing like who you are with that eventual host community. I think that's the thing that we kind of bring into our work on the recruitment side like every day. So I hope that answers the question. I'm going to move on now. So thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. I think that definitely answered the question, and thank you, everybody. Buba, did you have something to add?
No, I got to tell you, Ryan, as you were speaking, I thought to myself, well, first of all, Thailand, that's fantastic. I want to go there. But then secondly, if I wasn't working for Target, I'll be right there with you, my friend. So, no, but I agree. I think Ryan made some very good point that I'll just kind of echo. Just one thing is that unique perspective is extremely critical for any organization. So when we talk about diversity, you know, and I think Brittany, you touched on it a little bit earlier, which was it isn't just, you know, diversity by race. There are a lot of different perspective that comes with diversity, right? So I moved from West Africa. I moved from Sierra Leone, and I've been in the U.S. now for about 22 years, maybe. And so I have a very unique perspective that I bring to Target with me every day. That if you are not raised in Sierra Leone, for example, where I'm from, there's no way you would have that perspective, right? So I think that's why diversity is very critical. I think for all of us, not just for me, but for every organization, because we see things differently because we've lived different lives.
Wonderful. Thank you all for that. So we'll move on to our second question. So how has diversity and inclusion shaped your recruiting efforts, and what unique initiatives are your companies and organizations engaging in to ensure that you are creating an inclusive work environment? Charlotte, we'll kick it off with you.
Okay. One of the biggest things you have to do, I think, is be creative and think outside the box a lot of times, because you can't do things like they've always been done, because that hasn't worked. For the most part, it has worked some, but not today. I mean, there has to be new ways of looking at things. And yeah, West Virginia University, being in Morgantown, West Virginia, that geographic location is not necessarily conducive to diverse candidate pools developing whenever a position becomes vacant. So since diversity outreach is my primary responsibility, I've really devised a few creative ways to attract a more diverse candidate pool from local and regional job seekers. In the past, for example, we've had several diversity-specific job fairs and events. And one of the ways that we determine really where our strengths and weaknesses are in the candidate experience is we participate every year. We have for the last 3 years now. We participate in a candidate experience survey, and that's done through a talent board. It's an outside resource that we use. And what we do is early in June, usually, is when we send out the invitations to respond to the survey. It's about 70 questions. It's a very long survey. And we send out that survey to any candidate or applicant who has applied since the previous July. So it's about 11 months of candidates and applicants that we send it to. And we expect, usually about 500 responses. The first year we got over 1,500 responses, and that blew our minds, because it's, like I said, 70 questions, very extensive survey. One of the most valuable parts of that survey is the comments that some of the questions have, text fields where you can actually put your own words and express yourself more specifically. And that's where I've really seen a lot of things that we need to look at and pay attention to. For example, and I'm thinking of one, I don't want to take up too much time. I could take up more time, but I'm not going to. One applicant, for example, was from, let's say, the West Coast. He was interested in working at the university, but he wasn't sure how what Morgantown was like with regard to inclusivity and receptivity to his partner. And he didn't know, what that was like. West Virginia, we don't have the most liberal or inclusive stereotypical image. And it is stereotypical because we are changing. But he was concerned about that. And that was one of the text boxes. He actually wrote about that as an applicant. So I thought that was really something we needed to look into. So I have explored, and before COVID kicked in, we explored the idea of working with the city of Morgantown, because if someone's moving here from another state, for example, they need to know that not only is West Virginia inclusive, how about the Morgantown area, that region? How inclusive is it? Because I'm going to be living there if I'm moving there. So we need to be partners with community leaders and community agencies and organizations to make sure that not only are we as an employer accepting and inclusive, but that the community is also learning to change their ways of seeing things or looking at things, a different perspective, to be more open and aware of what people are looking for. So that survey is, by the way, I just found out today that we have won. Last year, we won, there's like an award that you get, Candidate Experience Award. And last year we won it as an employer based on the responses of our applicants. I just found out that we won it again because they're having a positive experience. And that's very important, that they have a positive experience through the application process. So that's one thing that we're using. I work with veterans a lot. I interview veterans. I work with the regional VA hospital, the one in Clarksburg, as well as the one in Huntington. We partnered with the VA hospital about a year ago to hold a veteran-specific job and resource fair. And that was very, very well attended. And it was just a way to reach out to our veteran population. We've also won the Military Friendly Employer Award for the last 5 years. We were the first institution of higher learning to win both the Military Friendly Employer as well as Military Friendly School Award. That was about 5 years ago. So we're very proud of that. And we've held that Military Friendly Employer Award for the past 5 years. I've partnered with the Dunbar Foundation in Fairmont. It's historically it was a Black high school, and they have maintained the facility. And the Dunbar Foundation actually oversees that facility, and I partnered with them to run a couple resume and job search workshops in their facility. It was open to anyone who wanted to come in, but it's centered in the African American the population in that area, Fairmont area. And that was one thing we've done. Well, 2 years in a row we've done that. I'm looking forward to doing it again this year, if COVID is allowing us to do that. And I work with the vocational rehabilitation agencies with their clients and referrals. Developed a disability mentoring program for the month of October, where rehab clients are able to job shadow and experience a day in the life of a staff member at WVU. And since the Hispanic community, there's not a lot of Hispanics in our area, so I need to go reach out farther. And WVU's a member of the Pittsburgh Metropolitan Area Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and I try to attend as many of their events as possible. Always with the view of advocating for WVU employment. I've actually posed the question several times and during conversations, would you rather spend an hour in traffic driving to your job in the city? Would you rather just spend an hour driving down the highway to Morgantown? Which is better for you? And some of the answers are actually surprising. So some of them are willing to drive that hour. And we do have employees that live in the Pittsburgh area that work at West Virginia University. And I don't want to belabor, but and I don't want to take up too much time, but I also attend the Pennsylvania Diversity Council meetings, and there is no Diversity Council in West Virginia, but there's 2 chapters, one in Pittsburgh and one in Philadelphia. I try to attend the Pittsburgh meetings, and about a year ago, that council was soliciting nominations for the LGBT Summit Awards. And I nominated the director of WVU's LGBTQ Center, Chris Mayo, for that award, and she actually was one of the winners. And that was thrilling for a number of reasons, because not only is our little institution here in Morgantown, West Virginia, again, reversing those stereotypes. We were recognized as a cutting edge advocate, supporter, and leader in LGBT programs, and to be recognized a winner among 2 metropolitan Pennsylvania chapters, that was a major accomplishment for us. It really was. I was very proud of that. And I was proud of Chris. One more thing, and I'll be done. In 2018, we initiated actually a diversity symposium, and that was specifically for employers in the Pittsburgh to Charleston, West Virginia region. And we didn't keep it within that, but that was our basic focus. And it's important that we as a land grant institution help the community. And in this case, our focus was on helping employers with their diversity issues as well, because you're also helping diverse job seekers, whether or not they come to West Virginia University. Diverse job seekers need to have an employer who is aware and educated. And so we held several, it was a day-long event. We're planning another one, a virtual symposium in the spring of 2021. And there's various diversity-related workshops and speakers we have planned for that. So with that, I'll be done and pass it off to the next panelist. I'm sorry if I took up too much time with that.
Yes, so kind of how, the question was, how has it shaped our recruiting efforts? So kind of what, Charlotte was alluding to, like, you can't go, do the same thing and expect different results, right? You have to, have those partnerships like she talked about, Sherwin-Williams, we have partnerships with a lot of, different cultural groups, not only in the community, but inside our company as well. So it's a lot of times a lot of our recruitment efforts are just partnering the groups that we already have inside the company with groups outside of the company. So we have like a Latino professionals group inside the company. And so we'll go to campuses and, come to your cultural groups, student associations, and partner with them. I think what's really important here is that as a recruiter, you can't just visit, a community and say, hey, I'm a visitor, now I want to hire you. You have to kind of integrate yourself and learn about the community. What are your interests? And then align what we have to their interests. Because, a lot of people have different experience and different backgrounds. So things may be important to them. Maybe you're first generation college students. So, that stability of a company is more important to you, how you can support your family, maybe talking more about benefits and things like that. And we won't learn what you really want if we're just visitors to, to your different organizations. So we try to make sure that we are active part of the community, and our stores are in the community as well. So we know things around us. So just definitely, integrating that into our recruitment, strategies, and being mindful of that. And also other initiatives has really been on every level. So, as employees, I said we have different employee resource groups that you can join, whether it's Women in Leadership, we have African American, Heritage Group, we have, Latino Professionals Association, and a few other things. And then even going up to the next level, we have employee forums where you kind of a few employees gather together. We get a few people from every area, and they kind of talk about what are they seeing out there, as they're helping our customers in their areas. So we can understand and we can have practices to assist them, in different ways and address their needs. And then also all the way up to top level where we have a CEO forum. So he's a part of this CEO inclusion panel. So he meets with a few other CEOs every quarter, and they kind of go through some strategies, what hasn't worked, what is working. So it is really incorporated into our company's foundations, and you can find it pretty much on every level inside the company. And that's what we want to radiate outside of the company in our recruiting efforts.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that other places also have employee resource groups, like we definitely have those as well. I'm part of the One Spectrum for LGBTQ plus employees, and then we have them from like all across the board for like African American, Hispanic, Asian Americans, and also like resource groups for like wellness and things like that. So I mean, it's just we have a lot of them, and this also kind of trickles down not just on like an agency employee side, but also to our host countries and like the training we put volunteers through. I remember, I think one of the best trainings I went through during my pre-service training in Thailand was when they had resource volunteers come in who had already been there 1 year to try to like teach the new people like myself, like what it was like there being either LGBTQ I think we had one person who was like an older American, African-American, a married couple, and I believe one other, but it was nice because we all got to just go visit with everybody and go, what is your experience like being you in this country? And just what challenges do you face? What works for you? What doesn't? That kind of thing. So it's nice because it really does kind of go from the agency side, and it does go to like all over the world, like in all of the countries that we're in. And I think also just on like a recruitment side, at least in my department, what we're really focusing on is not only reaching out to like university campuses like I do, trying to find student affinity groups and things like that, but also focus really a lot on first generation college students or new Americans who are maybe like the first to go to college like in their family. And just try to have different types of conversations, because I think, as you were saying before, like just talking about benefits and things like that of how this is going to affect you like a couple years down the road, rather than just like what's going to happen right now. And also we have a whole team of specific like diversity recruiters who, and especially the ones that can speak Spanish, like have very, very good conversations, not only with applicants, but can also reach out to family who are very concerned about like, what is this Peace Corps situation? You know, if they're a new American or they haven't lived in this country that long, they might not know what it is and need to have it explained to them, like just basically like in their own language, which is super helpful. And just going over kind of like what this is and like why would it be good for their son or daughter to go and actually do. So these are just like a few of the initiatives that we have that I can think of off the bat. I don't want to take up like too much time, but thanks for listening. Yeah.
And so, and I'll bring it home with just a couple of things. I mean, obviously we have Greg on the call today, but our Greg and his peers from the talent acquisition team are doing a phenomenal job with doing things like this, right? Like whether it's getting on panels or looking at different strategies on how we can go about, you know, recruiting. I think for us, when we look at, you know, the things that we're doing or we've been doing differently, we've always done some consistent things to ensure we drive diversity, right? As evident, like we just released, I think it was about 4 weeks ago, we released what diversity looked like for us as a company, you know, across the board, you know, whether it's, you know, African Americans or Hispanics and Asian and so on. So I think when you look at even diversity down to the gender diversity, right? When you look at that mix, it feels like we are right on track with the goals that we set out to do 5 years ago. I think we're being more intentional now as a company is more so around the Black mix, right? We've got to do a better job as a company with Black leaders across the board. So I think that's the story that we saw. And one of the things that, if you guys had a chance to read that article, that Target is now committed to is raising that mix up to 20% in the next 3 years. And so we're doing a lot of things there to kind of help continue to drive that mix for us as a company.
Wonderful, thank you. And you brought up a good point that I think that it's important to note that each company has different diversity goals in mind and different metrics that they're looking at. So that's important to mention as well. So for our next question, I think I'm going to mix up the order a little bit. So Ryan, if you're okay with it, we'll start with you and work our way backwards. So for our third question, I have, what was the catalyst that made your company change how they look at diversity in the workplace? And Ryan, we'll start with you.
Sure. I don't think there was like one specific event or anything like that that made us change. As long as I've been working here, I was a volunteer from 14 to 16, and then I've been working for the agency since 2018. And as long as I can remember, this has always been a pretty integral part of what we've done. Basically, I think it just went from the point, I believe it was about 10 years ago when this initiative first started, when they were just trying to gain more volunteers that actually looked like the United States. Peace Corps was founded in the early 1960s. We're coming up on our 60th anniversary. So part of the challenges that we were facing, I think, as an agency, and just in terms of sending volunteers out, was we had a bit of a legacy problem, meaning that, you know, a lot of the people who were volunteers back in the 60s and 70s, you know, like later on have had children or know people, and they were all pretty much white, like back then. So then going on, you have a lot of like, you know, their kids have done Peace Corps, like a second generation volunteer, or they've just like in their social circle know people, and it's like people that are generally just like in college and things like that. So it's just a situation where we're trying to like actively recruit talent from across the board and just try to honestly like make it look like the United States actually does. So yeah, I'd be interested to hear what everybody else has. Thanks.
Charrae, we'll go to you.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure. I was like, I don't know the back way. I agree with Ryan. I don't think it was one thing that kind of stood out as an event that made us think, you know, change how we look at it in the workplace. You know, it's really because our stores are in the community, right? And we're a member of the community, and we're selling paint to local business owners and homeowners as well. It's just looking at those trends and being more proactive than reactive. So obviously, if you have a store in the middle of the community, you're going to see the community changing a little bit as, you know, new people move in, and you want to have people that are similar to, you know, what the changing environment looks like. So it's always been kind of you know, inside of our workplace, but definitely even touching on what Ryan was saying was definitely as far as getting up to higher management and other levels. I think attracting talent is one thing, retaining talent and advancing them is super important, right? It's a two-piece of a coin. So you want to make sure that you're having those opportunities. So a lot we have done as far as just to promote those opportunities, have a lot of leadership forums, and to show what we're looking for in higher management so other people can get there. And what we have found in Sherwin, because, you know, in our business, since you're doing management and sales, not a lot of technical skills, most soft skills, and we can teach you anything if you're willing to learn. But we're trying to say what that success can look like. It literally, any skill that you have from your, you know, diverse of experience can be successful here. So we're just trying to teach our people how to tell the correct story. So, you know, it's a lot of experience that you probably have that no one else has. But if you're not, you know, saying those stories in a correct way, then, you know, sometimes it leads to you not getting that role. So we're really teaching our employees how to tell the correct stories so they can go to the next level, because they have the knowledge, they have the experience, but we want them to be ready for, you know, that next step.
Great, thank you so much. Booba, we'll go to you next.
Thank you. So I think I'm in line with my peers as well around not one, you know, specific catalyst, right, that propelled us, but I think there are a couple of things, and it's really cool because when we go to those meetings and we hear some of the stories that Target tells around why we do, again, I know I talked about the operations side a little bit and how diversity kind of also ties back into operations, but like I think about 2 years ago, or maybe it's about a year and a half ago, actually 2 years ago during the Halloween, you know, where we did this huge campaign around Halloween costumes, you know, for disabled kids, right? So that was a huge one. Again, you talk about diversity, diverse thoughts. I think when you listen to that story during these meeting settings and they talk through, hey, you know what, it might have been a feedback from a guest comment, you know, that we picked up on that says, hey, like my child is disabled, but they don't have any costumes that work for them during Halloween. And so things like that can kind of propel us to do some things that we do, you know, out from the operations side of the business. But then the other piece too is there's another example that I thought was really unique last year as well. I think one of our chief diversity and inclusion officers shared this story where there was a child, similarly, there was a child that had very, very sensitive skin, right? And no matter what they were, you know, it was, their skin will break out, it will react differently on them. And so we created, you know, a line of collection for, you know, for kids with very sensitive skin. So again, another diverse, you know, another diverse way to kind of go about looking at things. So I think there are a lot of different catalysts, you know, that sometimes can propel our company, you know, to ensure that we're paying, you know, attention to all facets of diversity. And of course, I think I'll be remiss if I don't point out, right, with the incident and situation out in Minneapolis with George Floyd. That was a very critical piece as well, where the company thought we've got to do something, right? And so now we have the REACH committee is what it's called. I think it's the Racial Equity Action for Change Committee that Target now just institutionalized and ensuring that, hey, moving forward, we've got to ensure that we look at you know, how our Black team members are treated. We've got to make sure our Black team members are comfortable. We've got to make sure, you know, whether it's by way of institutions or whether it's by way of financial institutions or, you know, academic institutions or you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Justice system. I can't believe it's been a long day. Sorry, but it's by way of the justice system. So there are a lot of things that we look at. Again, I hate to say this, but there's no one specific catalyst that we look at. It's just a spectrum of things that we look at.
Charlotte, I believe you're up.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to reiterate everything that's been said so far, because we're all sort of on the same page in so many ways, and we've all recognized so many things. Yeah, I've been at the university only since 2007, but to my knowledge, there's always been an emphasis on diverse candidate pools for vacant positions. The emphasis actually became more focused around in 2016 when the EEOC responsibilities were moved from the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office into our unit, because we do the hiring for the workforce at the university. And at that time is when my position was actually created, to focus more on outreach and, as Charrae mentioned earlier, being proactive rather than reactive, and actually getting out in the community and hearing those stories. And you know, one of my pet projects too is retention, and you mentioned that too, Charrae. I mean, we can hire people, but we have to make sure that they like it there and give them a reason to stay. So yeah, with my focus being on the diverse job seeker and our workforce, we have a in-house publication. It's called E-News, and the I Count series was started a few months ago, where diverse employees are welcome to contact us if they want to submit their story. And we've had a couple already who have done that. And I think that that in itself is a very positive influence on our workforce, when they see that it's okay and to read the stories of people who maybe have major disabilities, but are functioning in some very challenging positions within our university, and they're happy there, and you know, they've overcome a lot of obstacles to get where they are. But there's a story coming out hopefully in the next week. This is October, in Disability Employment Awareness Month, and I wanted to get another article in. COVID's really put a damper on so many things we had planned, but that's one of the things we're doing. And you know, ERGs was mentioned earlier, and we have explored that. I would love to get some ERGs, and we're really working toward that within the university. So yeah, everything that everybody's doing, you know, we're all sort of on the same page, I think.
Great, thank you so much. And then prior to this event, we asked our students at West Virginia University to submit questions for each of you to answer live on this panel. So we'll go ahead and get into those. Charrae, I think I'll start with you since you haven't had a chance to go first yet, and then we'll go to Ryan and then Buba and finish with Charlotte. All right, so we're gonna start with the student question that was submitted here, and it says, how important is it for employers to look for employees who provide a sense of diversity, not only by race and culture, but by thought processes and opinion?
Very important. You know, just as I was saying before, obviously we need innovation. Innovation is what keeps a company going. You can't have, like I said, do the same thing consistently and expect different results. So we're always thinking of new ideas, especially, you know, in our company, we have it to where while we're not like a franchise store or anything like that, all stores are corporately owned. But the assistant manager, the store manager, and employees in there, they have a lot of creativity. And if they want to have events for their, you know, customers, if they want to, you know, donate paint to local schools, if you want to donate masks, which we have done a lot, obviously, with the pandemic, it's really up to them. So we need those creative minds to come up with those events. different ways to sell, paint, because, selling paint is, we say it's not a sexy job. You're not like, oh, everyone doesn't wake up, on their kindergarten morning and say like, I want to be a paint salesman all my life, right? We understand. So it's just different ways of, those diversity of ideas really help kind of sell our product to a customer so it can relate more to them and things like that. So innovation in a workplace, not just with thoughts and ideas, is super important to keeping the company going and, going and flowing.
Yeah, I'd agree completely with that. I mean, it's extremely important to get people that have like different types of backgrounds, especially in our volunteer pool. That's why we try to pull from people that are straight out of college and also people that are retired. Just so we have a lot of people that have always wanted to do something like Peace Corps and come in with like a wealth of experience. And we have people that are coming straight out of an education who want to like use skills they've learned in school or through volunteer activities or something like that. So yeah, as long as you're bringing like new ideas to the table and you want to like share them with the world while gaining international experience, that's basically the people that we're looking for. So, and if you come in with it with like other languages or things that that's even better. So yeah, and also just to be, we're looking for people like honestly that with an open mind, obviously, to go over and live in a completely foreign community for 2 years. So we're looking for people that, can obviously have this open mind, but also be willing to listen to what they're going to learn in like their host communities and not try to like think that they know everything once they get there. So yeah, it's extremely important. That's my long answer, short answer for a long answer. So thanks.
Yeah, and I'll just chime in, right? I mean, as it's critical. So echo what my peers are saying here. It's totally necessary for successful business. It's necessary for a successful company or a successful school to have that diverse thoughts. I think about as you were asking the question there, Brittany, there's a reason why at Target we don't just limit it to, hey, you only have to have a bachelor's in economics to come work for Target, right? Like if you have higher education and you have a degree in arts or science, it doesn't matter. You're welcome to come work for Target. And the reason for that is we appreciate the perspective, right? If you have, if you go to school for 4 years or 6 years or what have you, and you ended up with a degree in science versus arts, well, you're going to think differently. Like people with science background thinks differently versus people with arts background. So I think that's pretty cool from that perspective. But then the other piece too is when you look at, like I think about some of my meetings that I've been in, I think about some of the conferences that I've sit in, I almost always encourage my teams to be opinionated because I want to hear their thoughts. I want to hear what they have to say, right? And that's how we get better. And it's so cool because we're such a big company, right, with well over 300,000 employees and so on. But some of our very best processes comes from our team members that are literally in our stores grinding it out on a daily basis. And so we really truly encourage that diverse thought process, not only diversity around race and gender, but also diversity as well around the thought process, because that's how we all get better as leaders. That's how we get better as a company.
I wanted to just, everything that's been said is just so spot on. I think that when you're interviewing a candidate, though, in the interview process, it's important to, it's not always possible, but it's during that assessment period when you're interviewing them, because everyone's, trying to come up with good answers to get hired sometimes. But, at WVU, there's been a new way of interviewing that was adopted a couple years ago. It's campus-wide, it's been adopted by hiring managers, and there's been trainings done on motivation-based interviewing. And that's one way that hiring managers can explore past situations and possibly elicit personal responses, how they've responded to critical issues in the past, and get a sense for how diverse really their thinking is, and how thinking out of the box they are, and how willing they are to take that risk or go the extra mile or whatever it takes And so the interview process itself, I think, is a very good way to do that. And there's a lot of room for future expansion in that motivation-based process to help discover that sense of diversity in the job applicant.
Wonderful, thank you. We'll move on to our second student submitted question. So one of the questions we received was, for a student who will graduate and become employees, what are practical ways that they can help to promote inclusion and diversity at their new workplace? Booba, I believe you're the only one who hasn't gone first, so we'll go with you and then go to Charlotte and so forth.
Absolutely. Well, thanks. That's another great question. I think a couple of things. The first is just stay true to yourself, right? Stay true to yourself, because that's what it's all about. You know, your uniqueness, whichever company you end up working for, your uniqueness is probably why they hired you. Obviously with your well-qualified background, but stay true to yourself. And then the other piece too is, it's interesting, we just kind of have a training just yesterday. Like we have a conference call rather, where we talk about a lot of different things. But one of the things that really stood out to me is at Target, we have what we call the Guardrails for Inclusion and Empathy, right? And in these Guardrails, it talked about a lot of different things, right? Like I think it has like 12 or 16 buckets that highlight multitude of things that in order for you to continue to, you know, to practice and drive diversity, and it talks about being true to yourself. It talks about, you know, misery is optional, right? Like you could choose to be miserable or not, right? So it talks about embracing all perspective. It talks about maintaining, you know, psychological safety and so on. So there are a lot of different factors that this, you know, guardrail talks about. So I think when I hear that question, that's the one thing that kind of, you know, sticks in mind, is staying true to yourself and have your own certain criteria or guardrails that you're going to use in whichever company you ended up working for.
Go ahead, Charlotte, you can go next.
I think it depends on somewhat on the position that you're holding and the level of influence and responsibility that you have. Any employee rather has, we all have our level of influence in our circle of coworkers, and but we can't say enough about how much higher management can influence the culture and the way that people view diversity and whether they accept it or not. And I just think that the way we behave and our attitude, being, like Buba said, being true to ourselves, being a role model, helping to develop policy of intolerance toward any form of discrimination, or so it's just so many things that can be done. It's kind of hard to pinpoint it. So I'm going to pass it off to the next panelist.
Yeah, so kind of agreeing here, I think what's really important, you know, as you start as any employer, is speak up. You know, while you're being authentic to yourself, speak up. People don't know what's important to you if you don't tell them. I have like two kind of examples of that. So actually, when I was in college, I had an internship in my sophomore summer of college, which turned into a full-time job my junior year. So I worked a full-time job while going to school. And I would sit in meetings with executives and I'll be like, they'll say, what's your opinion? And I'm like, I am a merely college student. Like, you guys been in the field for 10 years. Like, what do I know? And then it's like we kind of been saying on this call, you know, it's a lot that experience that you have that no one else has. They're in university recruiting. I am in university. So, you know, I know about what, you know, college kids want to see. So definitely speaking up those opportunities and sharing. And then also sharing things that are important to you. So obviously, I am an African-American woman. When it's Black History Month, I let everyone know. I'm like, it's Black History Month, I'm excited, you know? So all kinds of different, you know, cultural things, whatever is important to you, speak up to those times So people know it's important to you, and you may get questions as well. So you're able to answer those questions and keep them informed. So speaking up, I would say, is very important to promote that in your community.
I think, and just off that, not only speaking up, but just being really forthcoming, I think, in either the interview or just like when you get to wherever you're working to like see, like, especially in the interview, like asking about like, what do you have employee resource groups? Like what kind of support is there for this kind of background, that kind of background, that kind of thing. I definitely asked that in my Peace Corps interview for like becoming a volunteer. I came out to my interviewer and I just said like, you know, what kind of support is there for people like me? Will I be sent to a country that maybe they don't have the best views on homosexuality and things like that? And so we had a really honest conversation. It was really good because they basically placed me in a country that's super friendly to all that. That's not to say that people like me can't serve in like any of the Peace Corps countries. It's just there's other things you have to like take into consideration. And I think, yeah, just off of that, like being able to go into a place, like into a new place and like just kind of find the other people that are sort of like you and kind of make those connections within the company or within the organization in which you're working is really important. It can help you feel like more of a part of the team early on rather than like trying to find your own way. So yeah, thanks very much.
Sure. I think we have time for one final question here, and I'll go ahead and ask you all to fill in your final thoughts with this last question as well. So what advice can you give someone on where to start looking for a diverse and culture promoting workplace?
I agree with what Ryan was saying earlier. I think it's asking those questions. You can ask them during an interview, at a career fair, wherever. You know, see, what do you have for someone in my community, and how do I fit in? How do I fit in here? You know, with searching for any job, culture of a company is like the most important thing. Forget about all the other stuff. You need to see if you can, you know, fit in there and you feel like it's a place that you can grow. So I think it's definitely doing that research. And with a lot of companies, obviously, Google is your best friend. Hey, Google some of their things, Google some of their reviews. And obviously, you know, with reviews, you got to be a little careful because, you know, some people, if they're a little disgruntled, they'll put a review, obviously. But you want to make sure that you're checking out their website, you know, on the pictures of their employees. Are they showing diverse candidates, or is it just the same guy? Or does it look like it's fake people? Because some companies do that too, where it's like a guy that posed, you know? So you want to make sure you're doing your research on the company, and that's in the interview and before you get to the interview as well.
Yeah.
I agree. Oh, sorry, Buba. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ryan. Please go. Now, I was just going to chime in there. I think to that point, you know, I think I remember when I was in college, I wish someone had given me this advice, right? When you go interviewing for a job, interview the company that's interviewing you, right? So that's extremely important because at the end of the day, right? If you're looking for a career, like I think, you know, I came straight from campus. I was an intern, and I've been with Target for going on 17 years now, straight out of college. I've never worked any other job. But when I went to go work with Target, my intention was I wanted this to be a career. Like I didn't want to make it a job. I didn't want to, you know, do this for 2 years and then go work for another company for another 5 and then go to another company. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but that was just not kind of like my thing. My thing was I wanted a career, I wanted a long-term commitment and so on. So I was fortunate, you know, and I was able to ask all the right questions. Although now in retrospect, I think, man, I wish I could have asked a little bit more, but thank goodness it worked out. But so for me, that's the biggest piece is interview them. They're interviewing you and interview them. And then I think, you know, in the environment that you go do these interviews, like I think about our stores, for example. Now, if I'm a diverse candidate and I'm going to go interview at a location and I walk into that location with 100+ employees and they have at about 5%, you know, diverse, that's not a good representation. That's not a good mix for me. So look at those subtle cues. And I think, Charrae, you kind of pointed to that a little bit. Like, look at some of those subtle cues and go, oh, I don't know. Like, I mean, we are in a predominantly diverse neighborhood, but we only have 5% or 3% or 10% or 15%. That doesn't jive with what I'm looking for. So look for those things along the way as you go through your interviewing process.
And I think just off of what Charrae was saying also about like, yeah, checking Google and stuff like that and being skeptical of like the reviews. I totally agree with that. But also sometimes Reddit, for Peace Corps especially, Reddit is a big part of like where people post stuff about it. But I do think it gives you a better like unfiltered view about either like what the agency experience is like or what the volunteer experience is like and things like that. I'm not going to actively promote it, but I'm just saying take it with a grain of salt. These are everybody's experiences. They might be disgruntled, they might have had a bad day, but they also might have had a really awesome day and write something really good. So yeah, just like definitely do your research. I think that's what I would like to just drive the point home, is do your research.
Well, about 4 years ago, West Virginia University, we changed the name of Human Resources, the Division of Human Resources, to the Division of Talent and Culture, because our Vice President, Chris DeBoard, decided that we were going to start focusing on the culture of the university. Not that it hadn't been done before, but we were going to primarily, as our division and every unit within our division, to focus on the culture of the university. And hopefully, some of the programs that we've initiated since then, we're still a work in progress. But I know that our culture has improved dramatically in the past 4 years, and I'm proud of that fact. And hopefully it'll just become, more and more reflective of what our employees want, and that they can all have a sense of belonging here, as well as our students, of course.
Great, thank you. Ryan, we did have one question come in. A student's wanting to know what the subreddit is for the Peace Corps that you mentioned.
Oh, and I just answered it, typed it into the chat. So I think it's honestly, if you just Google Peace Corps Reddit, it's like the first thing that comes up. So yeah, it's not agency backed, so I'm not going to technically promote that, but it's good for research, don't worry.
Great, thank you. And thank you for submitting that question. I think that brings us about to the close of our panel today. I really want to thank all of our panelists today for joining us at Career Services. We think that this is a really important topic to host these discussions on, and something that we hope to do in the future. We really appreciated hearing the perspective from your different companies and organizations, and I think this will be very valuable for our students. So if anybody else has anything to add, I'll give you 1 second to add it. Otherwise, we will end our session for today. Wonderful. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us. This will be recorded and shared on the Career Services website, so be on the lookout for that as well. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. See ya.
Thanks, guys.